She grew up in a small place where people noticed only what was loud and obvious. She was neither. She spoke softly, kept her eyes low, and rarely tried to pull attention toward herself. In school, teachers remembered the students who talked the most or scored the highest on tests. She was not one of them. She did her work, handed it in on time, and sat quietly at the back of the room. Many days, no one spoke to her unless they had to. At home, life moved at a steady pace. There was no drama, no special praise, and no strong opinions about dreams. Her family worked hard and expected her to do the same. They believed in safe choices and clear paths. Music was not part of those plans. It was seen as a hobby at best, a distraction at worst. When she was younger, she would hum while helping around the house. Sometimes she tapped rhythms on the table without realizing it. No one stopped her, but no one encouraged her either. The first time she touched a piano was by accident. One afternoon, she stayed late at school because of rain. The hallway was empty, and the lights buzzed softly above her head. While waiting, she heard a sound drifting from a nearby room. It was gentle, uneven, and slow, like someone searching for something. She followed the sound and saw an old piano pushed against the wall of the music room. The bench was scratched and some keys were worn out. She sat down, unsure if she was even allowed to be there. Her fingers rested on the keys, shaking slightly. She pressed one. The sound surprised her. It was fuller than she expected, like it carried weight. She pressed another, then another. There was no pattern, no song, just curiosity. Something inside her felt calm in a way she had never felt before. The rain outside faded into the background. For a few minutes, the world felt quieter, clearer. When the bell rang and the hallway filled with noise again, she stood up quickly and left, afraid someone might see her. From that day on, she found reasons to stay late. She told herself it was for homework or to avoid the rain, but deep down she knew why she returned. She practiced in short moments, always listening for footsteps. She learned by watching old videos and reading whatever she could find online. There was no one to guide her. Mistakes were frequent, and progress was slow. Still, she kept going. At school, rumors traveled faster than truth. Someone noticed her slipping into the music room one day and laughed about it. Soon, a few classmates started making comments. They asked if she thought she was special. They joked about her trying to be something she was not. She smiled politely and said nothing. Inside, the words stayed longer than she wanted them to. Teachers did not help much either. One music teacher saw her once and asked if she was enrolled in the class. When she said no, the teacher nodded and suggested she focus on her regular subjects. The message was clear. Music was for those who showed talent early, those who stood out. She did not fit that picture. At home, she mentioned music only once. She spoke carefully, saying she enjoyed it and wanted to learn more. The response was not harsh, but it was firm. She was told to think realistically. Bills needed to be paid. Time should not be wasted. Dreams were nice, but effort should go where results were guaranteed. She nodded, pretending to agree. That night, she practiced on a small keyboard she had saved up for. Keeping the volume low so no one would hear, days turned into months. Her routine became fixed. School, chores, quiet practice, sleep. There were moments when doubt crept in. She watched others who seemed naturally gifted, who received praise and opportunities without trying as hard. She wondered if she was fooling herself. Maybe everyone else was right. Maybe she was just someone who liked music, not someone meant to play it. Still, something kept pulling her back. Even on the worst days, when she felt invisible and tired, she returned to the keys. Music became a place where she could speak without words. It listened without judgment. It did not rush her or ask her to explain herself. When she played, she felt present. She felt honest. One afternoon, the school announced a small event. It was not a big competition, just a gathering where students could perform if they wanted. Most people saw it as entertainment. Others saw it as a chance to show off. When she heard about it, her heart raced. The idea scared her. The idea also stayed with her. She told herself she was not ready. She listed reasons to avoid it. No formal training, no support, no confidence. But then she imagined the piano sitting unused, the notes trapped inside her hands. She imagined staying silent forever. That thought felt heavier than fear. She signed up quietly, almost hoping someone would stop her. No one did. Her name appeared near the bottom of the list. A few classmates noticed and laughed. Someone said it was brave in a joking way. Another asked if she was serious. She nodded and walked away before they could say more. In the days leading up to the event, pressure built around her chest. She practiced harder than ever. Her fingers hurt, and her sleep grew restless. Doubt whispered constantly, but she answered it with repetition. Again and again, she played the same piece, not trying to be perfect, just trying to be honest. On the morning of the event, she stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. She looked ordinary, just like always. No one would expect anything from her. That fact hurt, but it also gave her strange comfort. There was nothing to lose. As she walked into school, noise filled the air. Laughter, chatter, excitement. She felt small among it all. The piano waited in the hall, polished for the occasion, surrounded by chairs. She did not sit down yet. She stood back, watching others rehearse confidently. Her hands trembled, but she stayed. No one knew what she carried inside. No one saw the hours, the quiet nights, the doubts pushed aside. To everyone else, she was just another name on a list. But to herself, this moment mattered more than anyone realized. As the first performances began, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Whatever happened next would be real. Whether she was believed or not, she had already chosen to speak in the only way she knew how. And that choice, though fragile, was the beginning of everything. The morning of the event felt heavier than she imagined. She walked through the school doors, her bag slung loosely over her shoulder, trying to act casual. Inside, the halls buzzed with excitement. Students talked about who would perform first, who might win some imagined prize, or who would make a mistake and be laughed at. She moved quietly, keeping her head down, her heart beating faster with every step. Her name was on the list, but no one seemed to notice. No one really cared. And yet inside, she felt every eye was somewhere, waiting to judge, even if they weren't looking directly at her. Her practice in the last few weeks had been relentless. Every spare moment was spent at the piano, trying to master the notes and the rhythm, but mastery was elusive. Her hands still faltered, her timing wavered, and her confidence wobbled with every mistake. Some nights, she felt she had made no progress at all. Still, she returned to the keys. Music had become her safe place, even when everything else felt like it was collapsing around her. At lunch, a group of classmates noticed her sitting alone. They whispered and laughed quietly, just enough so she could hear. One of them asked if she was really going to play today. She nodded without looking up. Another laughed louder and said that it would be funny to see her try. She felt the words like cold water splashing on her, but she said nothing. She had learned early that arguing or explaining only made the judgment stronger. It was easier to keep quiet and focus on the one thing that mattered. Her music, her teacher from the piano class walked past and gave a small smile, but nothing more. It was as if he acknowledged her presence, but he didn't expect much. She felt a pang of disappointment, but she buried it. She had learned to rely on herself. Praise was nice, but it was not necessary. Music, she reminded herself, did not need approval. It only needed honesty. Hours passed and the event started. Students performed one by one. Some played confidently, impressing the small audience of teachers and classmates. Others faltered and muttered through their pieces. She watched each performance carefully, noting the reactions, measuring her fear against theirs. She realized that everyone was nervous in their own way. She wasn't alone in fear, even if it felt like she was. When her turn drew near, the room seemed to shrink. The chatter faded, leaving only the quiet hum of anticipation. She walked slowly to the piano, her hands trembling slightly. The bench seemed larger than she remembered, and the keys stared up at her, smooth and cold. She sat down and placed her fingers lightly on the first keys. Her mind raced with doubts. What if she forgot the notes? What if her hands betrayed her? What if everyone laughed? The weight of possibility pressed down on her shoulders, but then she remembered the nights she had spent practicing alone, the hours of repetition, the way her fingers had learned the rhythm, almost by memory. She remembered why she loved music, why she kept returning to it despite doubt and ridicule. This moment was not about anyone else. It was about her. It was about the music she carried inside. She took a deep breath and pressed the first note. The sound rang out clear and true. It was not perfect, but it was hers. She pressed another, then another. The room seemed to hold its breath. Students stopped talking. Teachers leaned forward slightly. Even the smallest details, the way the light reflected off the keys, the slight echo in the hall seemed to respond to her playing. Her confidence began to grow as she played. The notes became smoother, the rhythm steadier. She closed her eyes for a moment and let herself feel the music rather than think about it. Memories of late nights, of quiet practice, of discouraging whispers faded into the background. All that remained was the sound she created, and it was enough. When she finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, applause began. Not loud at first, but sincere. Teachers nodded, some with surprise. Classmates whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they had just heard. Some faces that had smirked before were now wide-eyed and open in shock. She felt a warmth she had never felt before, not from praise itself, but from being seen, finally, what she could do. She stood up, feeling both small and large at the same time. Small, because the world was still the same, with its harsh judgments and whispered doubts. Large because she had found a place inside herself where she mattered, where her talent and effort counted. She walked back to her seat quietly, letting the applause wash over her without needing to own it. There were no speeches, no fanfare, just a simple acknowledgement that she existed and that she had something to offer. The rest of the event passed in a blur. She watched other performances, but her mind was calm. Fear had not vanished completely, but it had shifted. It no longer controlled her. The doubt was still there, waiting in the corners. But she had learned that it could be faced and softened by persistence and honesty. After school, she returned home. The rain had started again, light and steady. She sat by her small keyboard and played for herself, smiling quietly. Today, no one had believed in her, but she had believed in herself, and that belief had carried through. It was a lesson she would not forget. The world could doubt her, but she had discovered a truth that no one could take away. Her talent, her effort, her music belonged to her first, and that knowledge, she realized, is more powerful than any applause or recognition. The days after the small performance passed with a strange mix of calm and tension. She went to school and lived her usual life, but there was a quiet shift in the way some people looked at her. Not everyone noticed, of course, and some still whispered. Some laughed quietly behind her back, pretending nothing had changed. But the small applause she had earned lingered in her mind. Like a soft light she could hold on to when the world felt gray, she continued her practice at home, spending hours with her fingers on the keys, exploring the sounds she could create. Music had become more than a hobby. It was her voice. She experimented with notes and melodies that had been trapped in her mind. She learned to listen not only to the music, but also to the space around it, the pauses, the gentle echoes, the soft hum of the piano when it rested between sounds. Each note was a conversation with herself. One afternoon, a letter arrived at school. It was an invitation to a slightly bigger event at the local community center, a music showcase for talented students in the area. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Her heart raced, and her palms were sweaty. Could she do it again? Could she play in front of a larger audience? This time, there would be more people watching, more judgment, and possibly more doubt from those who had not believed in her before. She tucked the letter carefully into her bag, rereading it again and again as if it were a fragile treasure. At home, she showed the letter to her parents. They read it quickly and shrugged. It was nice, they said, but it was not necessary. Life was busy. Schoolwork was important. Other commitments were pressing. They didn't say she couldn't go, but their lack of enthusiasm felt like another weight on her shoulders. She nodded politely, smiling softly, but inside, she felt a quiet fire. She would go. She had worked too hard to let this pass. The next few weeks were consumed by preparation. She practiced day and night, sometimes until her fingers ached. She faced every mistake carefully, analyzing each sound, each rhythm, each pause. The piano had become a mirror, reflecting her fears, her hopes, her quiet determination. Every time she thought she couldn't continue, she reminded herself of the last performance. How it had felt to create something beautiful, to be seen, even for a moment. That memory became her anchor. At school, whispers started again. Some classmates noticed the new letter and started teasing her quietly. They called it a big stage for a small player, laughing when they thought she wasn't looking. She felt the familiar pinch of doubt, but she refused to respond. Words from others could not reach the place in her heart where music lived. Her fingers were trained, her mind focused, and her resolve was growing stronger. The day of the event came. The community center was a large room with high ceilings and polished wooden floors. Chairs were arranged neatly for the audience. The stage had lights, microphones, and the kind of piano that looked almost intimidating, shiny and perfectly tuned. She walked in and felt her stomach tighten. It was bigger than anything she had faced before. More eyes would be on her, and the silence of expectation was heavier. She waited backstage while others performed. Some were confident and charming, playing complex pieces with flair. Others were nervous and hesitant. She watched, feeling a strange mixture of admiration and fear. She realized that everyone had their own struggles. The confident ones may have faced doubt too, in ways unseen. The nervous ones may have had hopes just like hers. This thought calmed her slightly. She was not alone, even if the spotlight felt lonely when her turn came. She walked onto the stage slowly, letting her eyes adjust to the lights. The audience was silent, watching her with curiosity. She walked to the piano, her steps measured. The bench felt higher, the keys smoother than any she had touched before. She sat down, letting her hands rest lightly on the surface. Her breath came slow, steadying herself. One deep breath, and she pressed the first key. The note rang out. Strong, clear, but gentle. She closed her eyes and let her fingers move with the rhythm that had become second nature. The first few bars were simple, familiar, almost like a conversation she had rehearsed with herself countless times. But then she allowed herself to explore. She bent notes, lingered on pauses, let the melody rise and fall like waves. The audience leaned in, sensing something different, something honest. They could feel her presence in the music. Even if they could not see the hours of struggle behind each note, as she played, the room changed. The whispering ceased. The air seemed to thicken with focus. Faces in the audience softened, some mouths opening slightly in surprise. Teachers exchanged glances, astonished at the depth and feeling in her performance. Even the classmates who had mocked her before seemed caught off guard. They had expected timidness, imperfection, hesitation. What they heard was precision, emotion, and an understanding of music beyond her years. Each note became a message, each pause a declaration of intent. She did not stop to notice the reactions. She let herself be immersed in the sound. Her heart had slowed, replaced by a calm determination. She remembered the nights alone at the keyboard, the secret practice, the doubts that had tried to drown her courage. She remembered each failure, each whispered comment of disbelief, and each silent moment of perseverance. Those memories became part of the music, giving it weight and meaning. Every note was an echo of resilience. When the final chord lingered in the air, she held it for a moment longer than expected. Silence followed, thick and complete. Then, slowly, the room erupted in applause. It was louder and more spontaneous than before, filled with surprise, admiration, and respect. She opened her eyes and saw the audience clapping, some standing, some wiping tears from their eyes. Her classmates, teachers, strangers, all acknowledging the power she had brought forth in a single performance. For the first time, she felt fully visible. not just for the skill she had developed, but for the determination, the courage, and the honesty she had invested. People who had doubted her could no longer claim ignorance. She had spoken through music, and her voice could not be silenced or dismissed. The realization was powerful and emotional. She felt a rush of pride, tempered by humility. She had done something remarkable, not by chance, through effort and belief in herself. Backstage. She sat quietly for a moment, letting the applause wash over her memory. She smiled softly to herself, knowing that this moment was a turning point. She had faced fear, doubt, and invisibility, and emerged not only unbroken but stronger. Music had become more than a skill. It had become her voice, her armor, and her escape. She had discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. When she left the community center, the evening sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink. She walked home slowly, savoring the sense of achievement. The streets were quiet, and the world felt a little larger, a little more open to possibility. She knew there would be challenges ahead, people who would doubt or ignore her again, and obstacles she could not yet foresee. But she also knew that the music inside her was untouchable, a force that could carry her through even the darkest days. This was only the beginning of a journey she had chosen. She was ready to see where it could take her. The weeks following the community center performance were a strange mix of quiet and change. She went to school and continued her routine, but the whispers and sneers had become fewer. Some classmates who had doubted her now looked at her differently, though most tried to hide it. Teachers occasionally gave small nods of acknowledgement when they passed by. Nothing was loud or dramatic, but there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a recognition that she had done something important. Still, she did not let it change her. Music was hers first and foremost. Recognition was secondary. At home, she practiced even more seriously than before. Her keyboard had become a constant companion, and the piano, when she could reach it, a place of exploration and discovery. She tried new styles, attempted complex melodies, and even began composing small pieces of her own. Each day was a challenge, a chance to push her boundaries further. She knew she still had much to learn, and that thought both excited and scared her. One day, her school announced an upcoming citywide competition. This was different from anything she had faced before. It was not just classmates and local teachers watching. This event promised judges, audience members, and competitors from other schools. Her heart leapt at the opportunity and froze at the same time. She had never performed for such a crowd. Could she handle the pressure? Would she falter? Or worse, fail completely? Her parents heard about the competition and expressed concern. They were supportive in a gentle way, reminding her to focus on schoolwork and to be realistic. They worried about disappointment and the stress of performance. She listened quietly, nodded politely, but made her own decision. This was her chance, and she could not ignore it. Music had become a part of her identity, something she could not set aside, because others were uncertain. The days that followed were filled with preparation and inner struggle. She practiced tirelessly, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. She faced mistakes that seemed insurmountable and notes that refused to come out as she imagined. Doubt whispered, reminding her of past failures, of moments when no one believed in her. But she answered those whispers with perseverance, with patience, and with a quiet determination that no one could see. Each note she played became a small victory, proof that she could keep going. At school, she noticed that some classmates watched her more closely now. They were curious, maybe even a little envious. Some whispered behind her back, speculating whether she had real talent or if it had been a fluke. She ignored them, focusing on the piano and the music she wanted to bring into the world. She had learned that trying to convince others was useless. Her work had to speak for itself. The day of the competition arrived. The venue was large, with a stage that seemed almost too big, chairs filling the room and bright lights shining down. Competitors from other schools were already practicing, some exuding confidence, others moving nervously. She felt her usual mix of fear and anticipation. The backstage area smelled faintly of varnish and polished wood. The sound of warm-up notes filled the air, each one a tiny heartbeat of the room. When her turn was called, she stepped onto the stage with measured steps. The crowd's quiet murmur made her heart pound, and she could feel the weight of expectation pressing down. She sat at the piano and let her hands rest lightly on the keys. One deep breath, and she began. The first notes rang out, gentle but firm, commanding attention not through volume but through honesty. The audience fell silent as she played. Her fingers moved with confidence and control, her melody flowing naturally. Each note carried emotion, telling a story of struggle, persistence, and hope. She did not rush, nor did she pause unnecessarily. She let the music breathe, letting each sound speak before the next arrived. The audience responded instinctively, drawn into the rhythm and depth of her performance. As she continued, she allowed herself to take risks. She played notes she had hesitated over in practice, letting them resonate with a purity that surprised even her. She felt a strange sense of liberation. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. Her focus was complete, her connection to the piano absolute. Every gesture, every subtle shift of her fingers, became part of a larger conversation between her and the music. The judges leaned forward, intrigued and impressed. Teachers in the audience watched closely, many exchanging looks of admiration. Even some classmates who had doubted her found themselves unable to look away. They had expected hesitation, perhaps imperfection, but instead they saw skill and emotion that could not be ignored. The room was filled with a powerful, silent understanding. This was a performance that mattered. When the final note lingered and faded into quiet, there was a pause, a collective intake of breath. Then the applause began, slowly at first, then growing into a wave of appreciation that filled the hall. It was sincere, unprompted, and filled with a mixture of surprise, admiration, and respect. She rose from the piano, a small smile on her face, acknowledging the audience without words. The moment was hers, but it belonged to everyone who had witnessed her courage and talent. Backstage, she sat quietly, her hands still tingling from the music. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the small practice sessions, the doubts, the whispers, the nights spent alone at the keyboard. She realized that each challenge had shaped her, building resilience, focus, and a deeper connection to her craft. She had faced fear, and in doing so, had discovered the strength within herself. The competition concluded, and she left the venue with a sense of quiet triumph. She did not need trophies or certificates to validate her experience. The music, the effort, and the courage she had shown were reward enough. People might continue to doubt or underestimate her in the future, but she had learned a truth that could not be shaken. Her dedication and talent were real, and they could carry her forward, no matter the opinions of others. As she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt the satisfaction of a journey well traveled. She knew there would be more performances, more challenges, and perhaps even more doubt from those around her. But she also knew that she had proven to herself that she was capable of rising above fear and skepticism. Music had become not just a skill, but a companion, a voice, and a source of unwavering confidence. It had transformed her quietly, deeply, and irrevocably. The weeks after the citywide competition were filled with a quiet change in her life. People at school began to notice her in a new way, though it was subtle at first. A nod of acknowledgement here, a whispered compliment there. It was not loud or constant, but it was enough to show that the perception of her had shifted. She no longer walked unnoticed, and some classmates who had mocked her before were now hesitant to do so. Their doubts had not disappeared, but respect had begun to replace ridicule. She continued to practice every day. Music had become the core of her identity, a part of her life that was deeply personal and unshakable. Each time she sat at the piano, she explored new melodies, experimented with different styles, and allowed herself to feel the emotion behind every note. Her fingers moved with a confidence that had been built over countless hours of silent struggle and perseverance. Each piece she played carried not only skill but also the story of her journey, one of doubt, persistence, and quiet triumph. Opportunities began to appear unexpectedly. A local teacher asked if she would consider performing at a small community event. Another suggested she join a youth orchestra. Even some students approached her, shyly complimenting her skills and asking questions about her music. These moments were new to her, but she received them with humility. She did not seek attention or fame. She simply wanted to continue exploring the music she loved. Recognition was secondary, a byproduct of dedication and authenticity. At home, her parents had begun to understand the depth of her commitment. They saw the hours she spent at the keyboard, the care with which she practiced, and the joy she derived from her music. Their support became more encouraging, though still cautious. They reminded her to balance schoolwork and responsibilities, but they also acknowledged the unique talent she possessed. Their pride, subtle yet genuine, added warmth to her quiet victories. As months passed, she faced new challenges. Competitions became larger, audiences more critical, and the pressure increased. Yet with each performance, she grew stronger. Fear and doubt remained companions, but they no longer controlled her. She had learned to channel them into focus, to let them enhance rather than hinder her expression. Each note was deliberate, filled with intention, and reflected the countless hours of preparation and self-belief. The music itself began to evolve. She started composing short pieces, experimenting with melodies that expressed her thoughts and emotions in ways words could not. Each composition told a story of struggle, hope, courage, and resilience. She discovered that music was not only a form of self-expression, but also a way to connect with others. Audience members responded not just to her skill, but to the honesty and emotion in her performance. They felt what she felt, even without knowing her story. Her confidence grew, but she remained grounded. She understood that recognition could be fleeting, and that the opinions of others were not the measure of her worth. The music itself, the process of learning, creating, and performing, was what mattered most. She continued to practice quietly at home, exploring new sounds and techniques, always striving for growth and authenticity. One evening, she received an invitation to perform at a larger regional event. This was a significant opportunity, one that would place her in front of experienced judges, audiences from multiple schools, and potentially open doors for further advancement. Her heart raced at the prospect, a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. She spent days preparing, practicing with intensity, refining her pieces, and focusing on the emotions she wanted to convey. The day of the regional event arrived. The venue was grand, with a stage that seemed larger than any she had encountered. The audience was filled with students, teachers, and music enthusiasts. The backstage area was filled with nervous performers and the quiet hum of anticipation. She felt her usual mixture of fear and determination. As she waited for her turn, she reflected on her journey, the countless hours of practice, the moments of doubt, the whispers of disbelief, and the small victories that had carried her forward when her name was called. She walked onto the stage with steady steps. The audience fell silent, watching her with curiosity and expectation. She approached the piano, sitting down with a calm determination. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, and she took a deep breath. One note, then another, and she began to play. The music flowed naturally, filled with emotion and precision. Each note carried her story, every pause a reflection of her struggles and triumphs. The audience was captivated. Faces softened, eyes widened, and a quiet respect filled the room. Teachers and judges exchanged impressed glances, acknowledging the skill, emotion, and dedication she brought to her performance. Even some classmates who had doubted her before were visibly moved, realizing that her talent was genuine and profound. The music spoke where words could not, conveying a message of resilience, courage, and authenticity as she reached the final notes. She held them longer than expected, allowing the sound to resonate fully in the room. Silence followed for a moment, thick and complete, before applause erupted. It was loud, sincere, and filled with admiration. She rose from the piano, smiling softly, acknowledging the audience with a quiet grace. The moment was powerful, but it was not about recognition. It was about the journey, the effort, and the courage it took to arrive at this point. After the performance, she sat quietly backstage, reflecting on everything she had learned. She realized that belief in oneself mattered more than the opinions of others. Talent and effort could not be denied when nurtured with dedication and honesty. She had proven to herself that she was capable of overcoming doubt, fear, and skepticism. The music had been her voice, her strength, and her guide. In the weeks that followed, her life began to change subtly. Opportunities continued to appear and her reputation grew. People sought her advice, admired her skill, and recognized her dedication. Yet she remained grounded, understanding that true growth came from continuous effort, humility, and a genuine love for the craft. Music had transformed her, giving her confidence, purpose, and a voice that could not be ignored. She understood that one note, one moment, one choice to persevere could change everything. The journey was ongoing, filled with new challenges and opportunities, but she now knew the power of believing in herself. She had faced doubt, fear, and invisibility, and emerged stronger, confident, and ready to continue her journey. Her story was not just about talent, but about courage, persistence, and the quiet strength that comes from embracing one's true self. Music had proven what words could not, that she was capable, worthy, and unstoppable. Life after her regional performance continued to unfold in ways she had never imagined. The quiet confidence she had developed grew stronger each day. She approached every piano session with a mixture of curiosity and determination. Music had become more than a skill. It was her companion, her voice, and a reflection of who she had become. She discovered new melodies, experimented with rhythm, and even began to write longer pieces that told stories only she could imagine. Each note she played was a small triumph, a testament to the time, effort, and courage she had invested. School had changed in subtle ways. Classmates treated her with more respect, and some who had mocked her before were now willing to listen to her advice or watch her play quietly. Teachers, too, began to notice her growth and dedication. They acknowledged her efforts with small praises and encouragements that felt sincere. It was not fame or applause that she sought, but the acknowledgement that her persistence had value. This recognition gave her confidence, but she never let it distract her from the music itself. Her parents had also become more supportive, understanding that music was not just a hobby for her, but an essential part of her identity. They listened to her compositions, encouraged her to continue, and even helped her find new opportunities to perform. Their quiet pride and understanding added warmth to her life, strengthening her resolve to continue pursuing her passion despite the challenges that might come. One day, she received an unexpected invitation to participate in a prestigious music workshop in the city. This opportunity was significant, as it offered guidance from experienced musicians and exposure to advanced techniques. Her heart raced with excitement and anxiety. The workshop represented a new level of challenge and a chance to measure herself against other talented musicians. She prepared carefully, refining her pieces, practicing with more discipline, and focusing on the emotion she wanted to convey through her music. The day of the workshop arrived. The venue was grand, filled with musicians from various schools and backgrounds. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and nervous energy. Backstage, she watched others warm up, some exuding confidence, others visibly tense. She felt the familiar mixture of fear and determination. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the piano. But she reminded herself of every step she had taken to arrive at this moment. The practice, the nights of doubt, the solitary hours, all of it had led her here. As she began to play, the room became still. Her fingers moved with a precision and emotion that reflected not only her technical skill, but the story of her journey. Every note carried a piece of her struggle and triumph, resonating with honesty and depth. The audience, including the workshop instructors, leaned in, captivated by the authenticity of her performance. Even those who had been highly critical of others paused, realizing that her music had a rare quality of sincerity and emotional power. Throughout the performance, she felt a strange liberation. Fear and doubt were still present, but they no longer held her back. Each mistake that might have once caused panic was now absorbed into the music, transformed into part of the story she was telling. She had learned to embrace imperfection, understanding that true artistry came from authenticity and expression rather than flawless execution. The workshop room was silent as the final chord lingered, holding the attention of every listener. When the applause came, it was immediate and heartfelt. Instructors praised her interpretation, emotion, and technical growth. Fellow participants approached her afterward, asking questions, complimenting her performance, and even seeking advice. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not because of recognition, but because she had once again proven to herself that dedication, courage, and persistence could overcome doubt and fear. Following the workshop, new opportunities began to emerge. Invitations to perform at local events, collaborations with other musicians, and the chance to explore new styles became part of her life. Each opportunity required careful preparation, focus, and emotional investment. She approached them with the same dedication and quiet determination that had carried her from the earliest days of practice. Music had become both a challenge and a source of joy, a constant reminder of her growth and resilience. She also began to mentor younger students who were interested in music. She shared her experiences, encouraging them to persist despite doubt or lack of recognition. Her story, once private and solitary, became a source of inspiration for others. She emphasized that talent alone was not enough. It was dedication, practice, and belief in oneself that made the difference. Her guidance was patient, encouraging, and filled with the humility that had defined her own journey. In her personal life, she continued to balance school, family, and music. The discipline she had developed through years of practice helped her manage responsibilities and maintain focus. Music remained the center of her life, but it did not overshadow other aspects. She learned to navigate challenges with resilience, understanding that setbacks were part of growth and that persistence often led to unexpected rewards. As months turned into years, her reputation as a talented and dedicated musician grew. She performed at larger venues, received accolades, and inspired others with her story. Yet she remained grounded, knowing that her journey was ongoing. Each performance was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect with others through the universal language of music. Recognition and praise were gratifying, but the true reward was the process itself, the ability to create, express, and share something deeply personal and meaningful. Looking back, she realized how far she had come from the quiet girl who was overlooked and underestimated. The journey had not been easy. Doubt, fear, and discouragement had been constant companions, but she had learned to transform those challenges into strength, using them to fuel her growth and creativity. Her music had become a reflection of her resilience, her courage, and her belief in herself. She understood that her story was not just about talent, recognition, or success. It was about the power of persistence, the importance of self-belief, and the value of pursuing something meaningful despite obstacles. Each note she played was a reminder that one person's determination could overcome the skepticism of others, and that genuine passion could inspire, connect, and transform as she played her compositions. Whether alone in her room, on stage, or in front of a small audience, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Music was no longer just a skill or a hobby. It was her identity, her voice, and her legacy. She knew that the journey would continue, filled with challenges and opportunities, but she was ready. She had proven to herself that she could rise above doubt, fear, and invisibility, and that one note, one choice to persevere could indeed change everything. Her story was a testament to courage, dedication, and the transformative power of believing in oneself.